government is supportive of significant investment in public transport, but each of those projects needs to be analysed in terms of how much extra people movements are you going to get and how it economically stacks up. Now, always in government, you need to test rhetoric with performance. It's against all the inclination, but the actual patronage, people that are travelling on our public transport buses and trains, has increased by more than twice the rate in the 4 years that we've been in government as compared with the previous 9 months. I know it's got against your prejudice, but if you actually look at the numbers, number of people travelling on buses and trains under a national government that perception is just all roads, because that's where the opposition focuses, has delivered greater growth than under 9 years when Labour was in government, including most of the time when the Greens were supported for supply and confidence. Last week is that we should be equally open about borrowing for sound investment in any of the transport modes. That is, whether it is borrowing for roads, for rail, for buses, for cycleways. The legislative changes that we're making enable us to borrow for any of those, and in my view it needs to be on the basis that we are incurring a debt that younger people need to pay, but we also get a benefit, and each of those need to be judged on merits. There is nothing wrong with loaning for good quality infrastructure if the economic stacks up.
Okay, on to our fourth question. What is your view on quality cycling infrastructure? And do you think the government should be investing more than it currently is? If so, by how much would you boost the spending? And this is Julie Anne.
No, Nick's going to have to...
I'll be 2 minutes on cycling and then I'll need to apologise. I've been really excited about the $50 million cycleway. That was a personal initiative by the Prime Minister. And I have to say, I'm less familiar with Wellington, but we have made more progress in my home community of Nelson around cycleways in the last 3 years than what we've made in the last 30 years. I acknowledge Green Party as a partner in that initial initiative, and more progress is being made. One of the areas that there's more progress being made is as our cities grow, ensuring that we make the allocation and the planning processes for those cycleways at the same time as there is new developments that build. Practice has improved enormously over the last 10 years, but there is more to do in that space. Over the next 4-year period, in terms of both land transport plan and the remainder of the National Cycleway Initiative, we are committed to about $84 million on cycle initiatives, and in my view that will enable us to make further steps.
You only funded a fraction of the Nelson Cycleway.
I'm sorry?
You only funded a fraction of the Nelson Cycleway. The ratepayers are picking up the rest.
Oh no, there's a portion of sharing between the ratepayer and the government, though I'd be very happy to give you the numbers quite specifically on Nelson. Our government has put more money into Nelson cycleways in the last 3 than what any government has done in the last 30 years.
There's no money for the Tony to Narromah cycleway, no money budgeted at all. It's not available for PAs. It hasn't been funded yet. The Tony to Narromah cycleway hasn't had funding allocated yet.
I confess I'm not familiar with it.
We'd like to thank Nick for being here. Carbon neutral in a New Zealand way, and she probably doesn't want this out.
I'm always happy to grow. Thank you very much.
I was lucky enough to live in Washington DC for 5 years, and it's a city that's crisscrossed by great cycle trails and a wonderful metro system, and it convinced me that the combination of fantastic transport and walking and cycling, those are a few of the most essential qualities of a great city to live in. I think that we've started to make some really good progress on the cycling and walking agenda in our towns and cities, and but you could double the money, and it wouldn't make much of a difference to the budget, but it would make a huge difference to cycling and walking in our cities, and I think that's what we should do. Where I live in West Auckland, there are wonderful cycle trails, but we need a whole lot more, and there's a really effective network of cycling advocacy organisations that are, I think, really pushing this forward. So it has an amazing civilising quality in our transport system and in our streets. So we need to push ahead with it.
So I think at the moment the central government has allocated from its funds something like $15 million a year for walking and cycling. We figured out that we could spend $75 million a year for the next 5 years and $100 million a year for the 5 years after that. That would allow us to more than double the investment in walking and cycling, but also to pay for quite a lot of it, increase the subsidies so that local councils really had an incentive to invest, because there are massive economic and safety and health benefits to making it possible for more people to walk and cycle around our towns and cities. And it's more than just money and infrastructure. It's not just cycle lanes. It's actually the design of every single street. And that is, we need a massive change to engineering standards, because you cannot plan to increase the speed and volume of vehicles and make it safer and more pleasant for people to walk and cycle. And we have an enormous opportunity here to increase property values, to reduce people's transport costs, to reduce the cost of our health budget, all through just changing the way that we design our streets.
I could get up there and play devil's advocate maybe, what we might do now, just back to the plan we originally had for the evening, was to get Professor Rolf Sims to give us sort of an overview of some big picture stuff. So we might slot that in now and then come back to the remaining questions for the MPs, followed by time for questions from the audience. Just get your slideshow set up here. And so just to introduce Ralph, he's Professor at the School of Engineering and Advanced Technology at Massey University. He's an international expert on energy systems, and amongst his many contributions to reports by the International Energy Agency and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, he's actually the coordinating lead author for the transport chapter of the upcoming IPCC report. So thanks for joining us, Ralph, and over to you.
How do I get the full screen? Thanks, Paul, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I was supposed to introduce, and now I'm going to summarise, but that's all right. I can amend it accordingly. Okay. I have to stand up here so I can see what you can see rather than turn my back to you all the time. So we're talking about the road ahead. I think that slide is reasonably clear. I've got a little bit longer than 3 minutes, so I expect I'll get the bell all the same. So I'm going to talk about global trends from the perspectives of the IPCC and IEA, and this actually fits very well with the discussion that we've already had. So I'll try and highlight some of those areas and give you both the chance to identify some issues. And as Paul just said, I'm involved with this IPCC transport chapter, which is taking a lot of my time. And I was based at the IEA in Paris for 4 years and didn't have a car, cycled everywhere, came back to Palmerston North, didn't have a car, cycled everywhere, until my wife finally said, gee, I'm not going to get this shopping in the wind anymore, we've got to get a car. So we do have a little car. That's what I was going to drive down today, because the last bus going back to Palmerston North tonight was at 10 to 8. So I had to join Nick Smith and disappear. So that didn't work. The Capital Connection, which has to stay. I use that all the time whenever I can. But today I had no choice but to come by car. Mass has been looking at these plug-in hybrid vehicles with Toyota, but we got a couple of them actually, but they were booked out today. So what I did drive in was my wife's little Peugeot, and I can tell you it's parked out there, and I came down in 4.3 litres per 100 kilometres, averaged 75 kilometres an hour, and did 143 kilometres. So the point about that is that small diesel cars are just as good, if not better, than hybrids. So we don't have to have the big limousines. There are cars around now that are pretty economic. And this has got its logo up, as you can see. It says Saving Energy, C'est la vie on the back, and Le Petit Carbone down one side, and On y va vert on the other side. So it's got the message. So there's three distinct travel options to consider in what we're talking about tonight. And they've sort of got mixed in with this conversation so far. There's intercity connections, and that's the Ron's investments. Linking the suburbs is the second one. And there's also moving around the CBD, the central city areas. And there's sort of three distinctive policies, if you like. So each option needs planning, infrastructure development, and a vision for future trends. And I don't know if that's really coming through tonight so far, or with the current government policies, because you've got to anticipate what the world's going to be like in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years' time. And that's been alluded to tonight, but I'll give a few examples as we go. So moving around the CBD, here's an example. This was when I was cycling. My office was right beside the Eiffel Tower, and I lived beside the Louvre, and it was 20 minutes on my bicycle every day. And there's characters going to work on their segways. They're already doing it. These things are not popular, not uncommon either. So it's a rapid way of transport to avoid the cars. And then the bicycles, the basics came in when I was there in 2007. 21,000 rental bikes suddenly hit the streets of Paris, which was great, but the trouble is all the cycle tracks are now full of tourists on cycles and getting in my way. But the technology was there, and interestingly, Phil, I was in Washington just last week, and they now got the rental bikes in Washington too, which I was pleased to see it. And of course, there's the famous Yike bike. And this is Grant Ryan who developed this. This is in Christchurch. It's an electric bike. It folds up. If you haven't seen it before, look up Yike bike on the internet. And I was preparing this presentation yesterday. I headed into parts of the north in the evening, and there for the first time I saw a Yike bike coming back out of town, a commuter on his Yike bike. And they're great little things. So, you know, the technologies are changing rapidly. We've got to accommodate them. And the co-benefits arising from mitigation actions may exceed the costs and values of implementing those actions. That's a quote from one of the key messages from the draft IPCC transport report. The co-benefits. And this was just alluded to before. Various studies show clear health benefits from active transport modes, walking and cycling. And some of those studies have shown a dollar value of something like $4 per kilometre walked or cycled, with all the health benefits and avoidance of fossil fuels, etc., etc. That's got to be taken into account when you do the cost-benefit analysis. So from the suburbs, that was the central business district, from the suburbs, 240 people can travel to work or play in 177 cars. Driving in tonight, I was watching all the cars coming out of Wellington, and there's about 1.3 people per car. So that's where you get 177 cars from. Or they could come in 3 buses. There's a few more than 3 buses in this total gridlocked picture of Shanghai, but you can see that buses are quite popular there. But 3 buses can carry 240 people, or 1 tram. And this is in Oregon, in Portland in Oregon, and as was mentioned before, trams and light rails and whatever have got a way to go. Give an example of one town here in Germany, Freiburg in Braskau, and I've chosen that because it's got a population very similar to Wellington. And they've got the trams there going through the town and out to the suburbs. And one of the suburbs, you may have heard about it, is Vauban, and it's an eco-suburb. And this is the tramway going out to where these people live. All of the buildings are solar powered, and they've got wind and such like around. The whole system is self-sufficient in renewable energy. And there's no cars. But you see, there's all the streets here where people are living and playing. The cars are parked somewhere else. The New Zealand house is designed. First thing the builder of the house does is build 2 garages so they're close to the road. They don't orientate the house for the sun. They just plan it so you can get your car in and out easily and build the